In this episode, we'll dive into how to work less while achieving more. This is especially for you if you're feeling overwhelmed, there's too many things to do and not enough time to do them all. Secondly, how to crush the last few months of this year with a 90-day sprint and how you can join us for that. The community said that last year doing this made a massive difference for them. And lastly, I'm going to answer some questions that I got. For example, why do I look different? I got a lot of comments about my jawline, how I look in general and how that changed, and there is a secret behind it that I'm going to share with you. So put on your seatbelts, let's get into it. If you're feeling overwhelmed and like you're working all day, you're doing so many things, but at the same time you're not really making that much progress, then this is for you. Once a week, the Driven crew and we hop on a call and we just chat about what's currently going on, what are our goals, what are our current challenges, and we just had a call yesterday, and one of our members, Chris, shared that he felt really spread thin and almost like he was going crazy. He was completely overwhelmed because he was working for a company, then also started another startup with a friend of his in the AI space, then also did some freelancing in that whole realm, and also wanted to start an agency eventually so that he can leverage himself and become, more financially flexible, independent, whatever you want to call it. And it became pretty clear why he was overwhelmed. And we dove into about 3 or 4 remedies that could really help someone create leverage when they're in that mode. And so I want to go over these with you right here. And I think the first one is pretty obvious. So over the years, I've met a lot of entrepreneurs. I've seen a lot of entrepreneurial stories. I've studied a lot of them, reading biographies. And there's a very common pattern that I see between those who are successful and those who just tend to struggle to get things off the ground. And so when I go to a conference or I get introduced to someone new and they tell me that they have this one business that they're working on, and then they also have this other side project that they are trying to get off the ground, and then thirdly, they're also dabbling in crypto, then I usually know that they are not succeeding and they're not going to succeed. Most people I know who have multiple businesses or multiple projects are poor. Not only poor, they're just not making progress. Whereas whenever I see somebody who's all in on one thing, they tend to make it work. Not always. Again, most businesses fail, most people fail. So I don't want to just tell you the obvious and say, just decide and pick one thing, you'll be way more successful. What I want to tell you about is something I learned recently that just made it so crystal clear on why that is so important. And it's because of passive productivity, which is now a term that I've coined. And again, if you coin the term, you own it. So I just invented passive productivity. So if somebody wants to write a book about it, I take 10%. But before I dive into that, I think so many of us, we start so many multiple projects. One, because we think it increases our chance of likelihood. Another reason is because we're just undisciplined and we think, this next idea is better. And as soon as we hit a wall, we want to start a new thing, hoping that it's going to be easier, but it's not going to be easier. And I think also a big piece is that we see so many examples for some reason that make it work, right? We see someone like Elon Musk who has 5 or 6 super disruptive companies. And therefore, we think, we have to do that. And there's so many motivational BS videos about the average millionaire has 7 income streams. I don't know where that comes from. I think that's total BS. I think most people make most of their money and progress and just build most of the success with one thing. And then once they make a lot of money from that one thing, then they diversify once they have money. It's not what got them the money. I don't think you make serious money by having 5 or 6 different things. I'm going to invest a little bit in real estate. I'm going to invest a little bit into crypto and stocks. And then I also have a business here. And then I've also invested in one of my friends' businesses. I'm yet to see that. It's actually the exact opposite. They do one thing, they're broke, and then they make that thing break through. And from there, they make money and then they diversify. So somebody like Elon is the exception. It's not that he's successful because he's starting so many companies. He's successful despite doing all of that. And those examples of people who we see that have multiple things that are working at once, number one, I think they're masters at delegation and people skills and hiring because that's their one thing. They're really good at that, at casting a vision and then bringing the team together. And that's they're one thing that they focus on, and it manifests in multiple companies. So that must be true. And it's one of the hardest skills to learn that usually happens in the later stages of somebody developing, the entrepreneurial skills, right? And later in their journey. And when you see a long LinkedIn bio of someone who is the founder of this and a chairman of that and also co-owner of this thing, then I would say that 80% usually is spent on just one thing, on their main thing. And then they're on the board of some other company and they've invested in another company and it looks cool in a bio, but it may only be one meeting a month, right? And on top of all that, let's just say it is true there's many entrepreneurs who have multiple businesses and let's say they're perfectly split between them. I still think that one would be way better. I think if Elon or whoever you want to take as an example focus on only one thing, the company would be way more successful. And probably Elon, he just doesn't work that way. But we need to stop looking at those people as examples for why we should do multiple things as well. But for those of you who are like, hey, I get it, it's obvious, you should only focus on one thing. Let me tell you something that blew my mind when I first heard about it or really had it explained to me. This is what I would call passive productivity. It's a type of productivity where when you're not working, when you're going for a walk, when you're taking a shower, when you're sleeping, you are still working. I mean, for any one of you who has a big project that they're working on, or you have a fitness goal, or just any goal in your life, you're looking for your life partner, whatever it is, if you put a lot of focus on that, you tend to think a lot about that thing, even when you're not actively engaged in it, right? Like how many of you have a business and you kind of joke about, I'm working 24 hours a day because when I'm not working, I'm thinking about the business. I'm thinking about the goal that I have. And so this is passive productivity. And Rian Doris explained it really well. There's some video on his channel where he breaks it down, and this is where these random insights come in, right? You're taking a shower and you're like, I've had this problem for a while. What if I did that? What if I just reach out to this person? It's these random insights that pop up. Now, this is where so much juice is. Because think about this. The world's greatest thinkers had the biggest insights when they were using passive productivity, when they took a nap, when they went for a walk, when they were daydreaming, right? For example, Dmitry Mendeleev, the Russian chemist who created the periodic table, reportedly came up with the idea in a dream. Mendeleev had been trying to organize the elements based on their properties, but the patterns were elusive. After working intensely, he fell asleep at his desk. In his dream, he saw the elements arranged in a table where they naturally fell into place according to the atomic weights and properties. Upon waking, he immediately wrote that down. And that led to the periodic table, right? Same thing with Friedrich August Kekulé's discovery of benzene's ring structure. He was daydreaming and the answer just came to him, right? And there's countless examples of that, right? Albert Einstein was known for taking naps. And when you feed your brain with just one thing, you can go very deep on it. Now, if you're very spread thin and you have multiple businesses, all of them has prep problems, then you're also trying to get your fitness dialed in, then you're also looking for a partner and you're dating. There's so many things that are floating around in your mind, and you end up only being able to go 1 inch deep with this passive productivity, where you have these surface level insights. Oh, I remember that I also need to do this. Oh, and this is also really important. And most challenges that we face that require us to break through to make a significant change in our paradigm or our behavior, they require a bunch of chewing. You need to chew on a problem long enough for it to break down to be digestible. Incredible analogy. Wow. But it's true. Think about this. If you were forced to make $1 million legally and ethically in the next 6 months, otherwise your family is going to get kidnapped and killed, whatever, something horrible is going to happen, could you do it? Now, chances are you'd chew on that problem nonstop. You'd focus on nothing else. Any other first world problem that you thought you had, or any other focus or little dream that you were going after, gets put to the side, and you only focus on that. Now, could you figure it out? I think so. You'd be continuously working on that one thing, and whenever you're not and you're going for a walk, you're sleeping, you're waking up, or in the evenings, that's usually when a lot of ideas come, because we get more tired, we're in a different brainwave state that allows for more ideas, and we're less likely to shut down bad ideas. And that's why we have these insights, especially in the evenings. You end up coming up with things that you normally would have never come up with because your subconscious is working in the background. And it computes things that you're not even aware of, right? And I think that's where like things like the law of attraction or whatever, like, of course, doesn't need to be said. It requires action. The way they made it look in The Secret is BS. But that's where those things come into play. Because you're so focused on a challenge, on a problem, and you keep chewing on it, the level of insight that you get from your subconscious, because it's computing all these things in the background, becomes so powerful that if you have a competitor who's starting a side hustle, you win. You celebrate. This is the biggest Christmas gift I could give someone, is just make their competitor start a new business. It's like, there you go. Easy peasy. Because the depth of insight and passive productivity that you're going to experience, they have no chance to compete against you with that, with their 1 inch deep insights, right? And if you're going to do something else, right, and you have your focus split, then at least make it overlap, or in a way where those things feed each other, right? For example, I make content and then I'm also focusing on building this community and hopping on calls with them and just fostering some sort of connection between everyone, right? Those are separate things. If I could just focus on content, would my channel do better? Yes. If I just focus on the community, would that get much better? Absolutely. But they feed each other, right? As I'm making content about it, more people hear about it, and the community allows me to come up with topics and I can address them directly through the content, right? And they become part of the content. So at least it feeds each other. And I'm sure you can find other examples where that applies, where one thing makes the other better and vice versa. And I think the whole idea of how many projects are you focused on applies not just to your businesses or your career, but really anything in your life, right? So the way I think about things is immersion versus maintenance. Dating, for example. Earlier this year, I spent a lot of time in this area that I had neglected for a while because I took a break from the content, as you guys know, and that time I took to basically nurture some parts of my life that have been put to the side. And dating takes so much headspace. It's ridiculous. The amount of times that you're thinking about, hey, did this person get back to me? When am I free? When can I schedule the next date? Swiping, whatever you're focused on, right? Or even going out and meeting people, going out to meetups or to parties, to approach some strangers and socialize. It takes not just so much time, but headspace as well. Same thing with something like bulking or going on a diet to lose weight, right? It just requires so much headspace and man, especially bulking. You end up eating 24/7. You're always full. You're always kind of lethargic, and it takes so much energy and focus and so many breaking points throughout the day where you're like, oh, I'm going to have to eat again and ideally put this chicken in a blender so I can just drink it because I'm way behind my protein goal right now. So right now, for me, for the rest of the year, I'm just focused on business. Pure business mode. I'm not bulking right now. I'm not traveling. And sorry, ladies, I'm off the menu. So the first remedy point is say no to as many things as possible. And ideally go all in on one thing. I think the less things you can focus on, the better. And that's why we hear all the time that saying no is such a superpower, because it takes discipline. It takes discipline and guts to be like, I'm not doing that. I see the opportunity. I see how juicy it could be, and I get super excited, and you have this initial optimism, but no. If you don't say no to a few things to get one thing, you basically say no to everything. So the next remedy I found is very counterproductive. But once you experience it, you will see how powerful it is. This is another thing that I learned from my buddy Rian Doris, who basically told the story of how he had a friend who had Lyme disease. And Lyme disease, for those of you who don't know, I think you get it from getting bitten by a tick, and it's some weird thing where your body just shuts down, and it's terrible. So this friend that he had a lot of pressure on him because he had just raised money and had all these friends and family who invested in him, who were hoping for an ROI, right? And just wanted to see him succeed. And he got really sick and he was bedridden and he could only work 2 hours a day, and he had all this pressure on top of him to now succeed. And despite being so sick and only being able to work a couple of hours a day, he ended up getting a lot done. And in some ways got way more done than what he used to get done. And it's similar to the story of Ari Meisel. I had him on the channel, on the old channel years ago. And yeah, it's this guy who also got really sick. He had Crohn's disease. He was in debilitating pain, which is like this gastrointestinal pain, right? Where, man, he just couldn't eat. And when he was eating, it was really painful and he was low energy and he only had a few hours that he could work. But that man just went crazy on systems, on productivity. And both of these examples ended up getting more done. On the flip side, what I'm noticing in myself is that when I'm working long hours, I'm not taking time off, and I'm just going. What ends up happening is that I become so ineffective, it's ridiculous. It's pathetic. And it just keeps happening. I keep getting humbled and reminded of this idea here. And so I work late and I make one bad decision, and it leads to 3 hours of extra work that just easily could have been prevented by just sitting down for 10 minutes and planning it out a bit and thinking about it and then realizing, oh, I actually could just do this, or this is not important. And sometimes it creates 10 hours of work. Sometimes it creates months of work because of one bad decision. And it's this vicious cycle that I think we find ourselves in because we lose track of what's important. Everything seems equally important because we're just working, and all these things are pulling us in different directions. Everything feels urgent, and we constantly feel behind and desperate, and we're just trying to claw our way on top of the to-do list, and more things keep getting added. We make short-term decisions, and then because we're working so long, our brain is fried, and we make more bad decisions that create more of this just wall of to-dos that all seem urgent, all seem important. So this is where the idea of work compression comes in, which is what Rian talks about. It's basically compressing your workday into a specific set of hours, and you force yourself to work less. For example, you could choose to limit your time from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., right? Or from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., depending on how hardcore you want to go with this. But the idea is that you just try it out. You just try it out for a day. And when the time hits, when 4 p.m. hits, when 3 p.m. hits, whatever the time that you set hits, you turn off your computer. And he tells this story, Rian does, where he took it so seriously at some points where he would be in the middle of an email, and because the timer hit, he didn't finish the email. What you do outside of that time then is relax and recover. You go to the gym, sauna, you journal, you go for a walk, you take a nap, you plan the next day, and you just strategize, or you think, journal, reflect, you read, right? And so if you think about it, you really only get 3 to 4 hours of deep work done per day anyways. And so protecting these hours with this time frame and then using the time around it to optimize for those few hours by, for example, planning the day ahead and getting really clear on, okay, what is the most important task for tomorrow? And preparing it by creating like a checklist with subtasks. And that gives you a consistent drip of dopamine, and you have absolute clarity when the next day you go into the task, you know exactly what you need to get done, what the subtasks are, how long it's going to take you. And on top of that, this is, I think, the most useful piece of this is that it forces you to develop leverage. Because in the case of the Lyme disease guy, in the case of Ari Meisel, who had Crohn's disease, or even in the case of people who end up having children and therefore the time is forced to compress, right? They don't have much time anymore to work. They have to look after the children, or I should say they want to look after the children. What ends up happening is that because you only have 4 hours to get work done, you're forced to think, what is most important? What can be eliminated? What can be automated? What can be delegated? And I mean, the most valuable thing you can do, the easiest thing you can do for your productivity is just choosing what not to do and just eliminating things, right? Going back to the first point of just picking one thing. And yeah, maybe I should make an episode at some point about delegation, because I think whether you have a business or not, whether you are working at a job or whatever you do, there are ways to leverage your time so much more effectively through delegation, automation, and also just elimination, right? And so work compression, that's the second remedy to think about. Just doing the counterproductive piece of limiting your time that you allow yourself to work. And the third one is very quick and simple. Whenever I notice myself working and just drowning in these to-do lists, for example, even recently I worked for 2 weeks without a full day off, I notice myself in the same trap again, where everything seems important and pressing and I'm overwhelmed and I don't know what to focus on anymore and I just become super ineffective. The remedy to that is just take 2 days off, or at least 1 day, or 3 days, like however much time you can take off. Because when you take time off, again, you get a clear perspective on your challenges, right? And I notice myself thinking about these 10 different things. I need to do this. And then I also have this client that, is really important to get cash flow in. And then for the community, we need to start doing this. But then I also got to put out the next episode and I haven't scripted it yet. And I should figure out what the next guest is. And should we have guests? And then also there's all these 10 things whirling around in your head. And it feels like so much, right? And when I take time off, I realize, it's actually just 3 things I need to focus on. Because this thing is actually not that important. That thing is actually the same thing as this. It's part of the same action. And that other thing, I can just delegate to this person and it should be done. And I end up, again, knowing what's important. And it goes back to also the passive productivity. When we take time off, these new insights pop up. These insights where we're like, I can just do this and it'll take care of that. I don't have to do all these tasks myself. I can just reach out to this one person and they're going to help me with it. And I guess it's also part of work compression, taking time off, right? Because you must get things done in a high leverage way in those times that you work and it's limited, right? And on top of that, obvious one is recovery, right? So Reendorse talks a lot about clearing allostatic load, which is basically this wear and tear that builds up in our bodies and brains from doing work. And that needs to be cleared, right? So we have better focus, we do better work, we make better decisions. Because, man, again, I bet there are decisions that have been made in history that created 100 years of work. Just one bad decision. And if that person just took a nap at the right moment and reflected for a bit, they could have made a better decision. And so on a smaller scale, we also do that. And I think it costs us hundreds of hours every single year or month. So thirdly, very simple, is just taking time off. And lastly, what I talked to Chris about, who's the one who came to us with this challenge, and we all chimed in to basically figure out the challenge that we all faced as well, was that he wasn't really sure which opportunity to pick. Because again, he was working on 4 different things or 3 different things and thinking about starting the 4th one, where he was working for a company, freelancing, a startup with a friend, and then he also wanted to start an agency where he could leverage himself and then pursue his goal of becoming financially stable. And what came up for me was this speech that I heard. I went to VidSummit last year, which is like a creator conference. And so Tom Bilyeu was speaking. So Tom Bilyeu, for those of you who don't know, he is one of the co-founders of Quest Nutrition. And he's now on YouTube. He's doing podcasts called Impact Theory, right? And so I walked in the middle of the speech, right? It was like this huge stage and I was just walking around. I wasn't going to any of the speeches. I was just there to hang out with friends and connect. But I remember walking in there and there's one thing he said and I was like, damn, that's a mic drop right there. He said, if you don't know what to do in the next 15 minutes, then your vision is not clear enough. Point being, you gotta be so clear or have such a clear vision, such a clear idea on where you're going, that you should know right now what the most important thing is. Because when you know what your vision is and what you're going for and what that looks like in detail with nuances, then you can filter every single thing that you're doing through that, right? And so that's what I asked Chris, right? Like, what is your goal? And his goal was simply to make a certain amount of money. I think he wanted to make 15 or 20K a month. And the thing is, you can make that amount of money with any of those things. So it doesn't really help you filter out these 4 opportunities that he has in front of him, right? And so how clear are you on your goals, right? How clear are you on your vision? Because, man, when it's very vague and broad and you're just like, I just want to make some money, everything fits that, right? Whereas if you say, I want to make a bunch of money and be location independent, okay, that narrows it down from 1 million opportunities to maybe 100,000. If on top of that, you're also adding another nuance, which is I want to be able to take 3 months off per year and not have it affect the business at all, then there's so many other opportunities that fall away as well. For example, you're probably not going to be doing a podcast or content creation, right? Where you are in the videos. Can you travel? Do you maybe have to travel for your job? Do you have employees or are you free? Are you just working for one client, a big client, or are you working for a company? Do you have a small team of 5 people or do you have hundreds of employees, right? What kind of people do you want to work with? Or just thinking about things like, how do you feel about your work? What's the impact you want to have? What's the industry you want to get into, right? And so I get it. It's difficult to know. Same thing for me. What is the thing that I actually want? Because it's hard to know if you haven't experienced it yet. And there's definitely scenarios where you end up setting a vision, and once you achieve it, you're like, oh, it's not as cool as I thought. I thought it, I think it happens all the time. But I think it is important to at least set something because you can always adjust it later. And as you're moving along, you can realize, oh, this is not what I thought it was going to be, or it is what I thought it was going to be, but I actually don't like it, and adjust from there, right? And one of the things that I told him was starting an agency is going to be a nightmare. If you want freedom, do not start an agency, because an agency is basically a people's business. Not only are you going to have multiple bosses, which are your clients, they're going to treat you like a boss, and the customer's king, so they tend to be very entitled, and they can be quite abusive if you have, if you don't filter them properly. And on top of that, you end up having to manage multiple people. And I think what I shared was so many people think that hiring somebody, the entrepreneur has it so easy because they just let someone else do the work. But hiring and managing people and training them and retaining them is the most difficult part of any business, I believe, as someone who's just scratched the surface. But just seeing the challenges that people run into and knowing people who are way ahead of me, it is the most difficult piece. And when you crack it, yes, then it works. But it's so difficult, even for simple things, which is why I think most agencies suck, which is why I don't hire agencies for most things. And when I think about hiring them, then I'm very, very careful because 90% of the time, I think you'll be let down. The point is, if you're not very clear on what you're going for, at least a general direction or certain parameters that you want to have in place. Do you want to be location independent? How much money do you want to make? Is there an example of who's doing the thing that you want to do? Then you can't really filter all these opportunities. And then you end up saying yes to a bunch of things that actually don't get you to where you want to go. So going back to the idea of passive productivity, when you're clear on what you're going for, your subconscious is going to filter these opportunities for you. You just have a sense, you just have a feeling. This energizes me, I want to do that, versus this doesn't feel right. Even though it's making money, even though it's getting the results, deep down, your subconscious knows when you've defined your vision and you've locked it into your brain, it knows that's not going to be it, right? And this is where the whole idea of law of attraction comes in, right? Of course, you have to take action, but there is a piece of just software in our brains that runs in the background that allows us to then attract certain things. Like what I've seen is that when people define their dream life partner, for example, they show up. Because anyone they meet, it's just put through that filter. This is who I'm looking for. These are the criterias. These are the deal breakers. These are the preferences. And they may have encountered them anyway, but because they defined it clearly, their brain went click. That's one that fits the description. And it's a fun process to sit down and journal and think about what you actually want and reflect on some things. And maybe we could do that together. Maybe I can make an episode about defining that, because I also get to revisit the things that I wrote down and maybe adjust a few things. So maybe that could be like a journaling prompt, do it with me kind of thing that we can have on this episode. But those are the 4 things. Number 1, pick one thing, obvious. Secondly, work compression. Thirdly, take time off. And lastly, get crystal clear on what you want so you can filter the opportunities to see if it gets you to where you want to go. And for that, you need to know where you actually want to go. Next up, we have a big problem, all of us, because we're approaching the last quarter of the year. 2024 just started yesterday. We had all these goals, and we have less than 4 months left. October, November, December is going to be the final quarter, the notorious Q4. And so what goals did you set in the beginning of the year? And how far did you get? Did you get there? Do you feel like you crushed it this year, or do you have a lot left in the tank that you are hoping to achieve by the end of 2024? This is where the final sprint comes in, the last 90 days, October, November, December. And maybe you absolutely crushed it so far, right? I think I did really well. On the outside, it looks like I didn't really do much because I took a break from my channel and I'm starting this new thing, restarting the community, restarting the podcast channel. However, there's tons of things that I made progress on this year on the inside that maybe you can't see, right? So I made a lot of personal discoveries of superpowers of mine that I didn't know I had, learned a lot about emotional vulnerability, dating and relationships, and I feel like I reinvented myself in the way I show up, the way I carry myself. And I found a new lane, which is instead of being a YouTube creator and a YouTuber, which I don't even see myself as that anymore, I now am reinventing myself as a podcaster and somebody who's leading a community. And I think we all go through periods in our lives every 5 to 6 years where we reinvent ourselves, the lane that we're pursuing, the career, our business. And oftentimes these unproductive periods where we are kind of unsure of where we're going actually end up being very, very pivotal and looking back, very productive. So this year has been a big win for me. And yeah, I mean, maybe just take a moment for yourself to list some of the wins that you've gathered this year, right? Don't just beat yourself up, but celebrate. Like, what are the things that you learned that maybe aren't as tangible, or maybe you've had a lot of tangible things. But who knows? Maybe you haven't had a productive year or a very happy year, right? So for me, the goal for the rest of the year is kickstarting this podcast, getting those episodes out, building some momentum and finding my lane. Like, what is a unique way to make this podcast stand out? I'm trying a few things. As you can see in the last episode, we kind of had the call with the community live. This is, again, just me. I want to see if I can find a co-host and just figure things out, build some momentum, right? Secondly, grow the community and stabilize the business and make money through the community, through the main thing, which is the content, instead of making it through consulting, which currently I'm doing some consulting on the side for people that have businesses that make a lot of money, 7 or 8 figures, and I help them with some YouTube stuff, but that's just short term on the side. Like, I don't want to make that my business. It's just for cash flow. But those are the goals for me right now. And so the beauty about a 90-day goal is this, and I talked about this last year as well. So last year we did a 90-day sprint for, on my old channel for the community. And there's a specific reason why 90 days is the perfect time frame. It's right at that sweet spot where it's enough time to make significant progress in any area of your life, whether it's weight loss, right? Getting really fit in your business, making a key pivotal hire, right? Figuring out a new career, getting a new job, getting into a relationship or starting to date again, meeting someone that you actually really like, versus just having 1 month, right? In 1 month, there's so many things that can go wrong or so many things that can pull you in a different direction, whereas 90 days is enough time to make significant progress. And on the flip side, it's not so much time that it feels like it's so far away, because 90 days is the cutoff period for our brains where it feels like this is soon. Anything past 90 days, I mean, maybe you've experienced that too. If you set a New Year's resolutions, by the end of this year, it's 1st of January, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And you feel really good about it, but you can always say, I'm going to start next month. I still have time. It's all right. Whereas 90 days, that's like right around the corner. That's very soon. We better get going. So it's the sweet spot between too far away where it doesn't feel like you're responsible yet, and enough time to make significant progress where you have a sense of control that you can actually move the needle. So approaching those last 3 months soon, it's September now, October, November, December, 90 days. What do you want to be true by December 31st, 2024? Think about that. That's the end of the year. And pick one juicy goal that you have. Like, what's one goal that would make everything else easier or unnecessary or more colorful or more playful or just richer, right? More abundant. So for some of you, it may be transforming your body. For someone else, it may be just like mine, just make more money, stabilize the business. And if you don't know what that goal could be, that's again where having a vision is really powerful, right? Because Gary Keller talks about goal setting to the now in the book, The One Thing. The one thing summarized is basically the idea that there's always one thing that is most important. We think of many important things, but there's always one thing that is most important more than anything else that makes everything else easier or unnecessary. That if you tick that one thing off, everything else either takes care of itself or becomes lighter, simpler. And we always need to figure out what is that one thing. And so he talks about a goal setting process that he uses, and I found it really helpful as well, which is you start out with the furthest timeline possible, where you have a one-day goal. Someday I want to walk on a red carpet. Someday I want to have $100 million in the bank. Someday I want to be a movie star, whatever it is. And from there, you ask yourself a continuous question where you narrow it down further and further to the now. That's why it's called goal setting to the now. So you start with the question, what would I have to achieve in the next 10 years to feel like I'm on track? So just to feel like I'm on track. It's not the thing that has to be in place. It's not the exact strategy that is proven to work, but it just feels like I'll be on track, right? And so the 10-year goal could be then, okay, if I want to be on a red carpet one day, and so the 10-year goal could be, I should be in the top 1% or 0.1% of actors in the world in terms of skill, right? And then based on that, what would I have to achieve in the next 3 years to feel like I'm in track of that? And that maybe I, have to get accepted and be in a top acting school in the world. And maybe you pick a specific one, right? And then based on that, what would I have to achieve this year to feel like I'm on track of the 3-year goal? And it goes back to the thing that Tom Bilyeu talked about, which is if you don't know what the most important thing is in the next 15 minutes, then you don't have a clear enough vision because you haven't actually reverse engineered, okay, what's the someday, 10-year, 3-year, 1 year, 90-day, 1 month, weekly priority, and then what should I do right now based on my weekly goal, right? And so, yeah, that's what I do too. I set a weekly goal, right? Or monthly goal. I set some goals for September. And then this week, what would I have to achieve in order to hit the monthly goals? And it just gets reverse engineered for that, right? Do you have to do it that way? Absolutely not. I think it's a very specific thing for my personality type and how I like to do things. But yeah, maybe you just have a goal that you just feel excited about in the next 90 days and just go for that. Trust your gut. So I want to start this challenge again this year, starting in October all the way to December. You can join at any point, but I will put out content about this on this channel so you can follow along. Or if you want to be in the action, then join the Driven community. It's application only. We have weekly calls to check in on our goals and support each other. And yeah, it's a way for you to meet like-minded people that also have goals, that hold each other accountable, and that have fun. So check out the link below to apply and hopefully see you in there. Lastly, there's a comment that kept popping up and a question about why I look so different. And it made me wonder, do I look different? What happened? What is different about me? So, for example, by the way, your jaw never looked this chat before. By the way, you look really different. Your jawline, your shoulders, they look awesome. It's definitely not mewing, lol. Is it because of regular gym and good diet? Damn, what have you done last month? You look more handsome than usual. You look huge, Leon. Really buff. Hey man, it seems like the right decision, and I hope it all works out. What sparked my attention is, how did you get such a big neck and chiseled jawline? Like seriously, I'd really like to achieve that too. Thought this was Dricus du Plessis, who apparently is a UFC fighter, and I don't see it, but this has popped up multiple times, this guy's name. And that I look like him a little bit. I mean, I'm flattered. This is a absolute chat of a human being. Why bro looks so much jacker in this video? Thank you. So I was like, do I look different? What happened? And there's a few things that I did that made a big difference. So this is what I used to look like. This is from a video in 2021, I think. So it's about 3 years ago. I was a young little chap. Now I am a grown man with a better jawline, apparently. Let me get into the secret protocol that I've been following that maybe changed the way that I look a little bit. And I think it did make a difference. I mean, if I look at pictures from back in the day, I look different. And so firstly, let's talk about the jawline. It all started when I went to the dentist. And I didn't go because I needed my teeth fixed. It was because my retainer had come off. I had a retainer down here in my bottom teeth. And I liked that it came off. It's this metal rod that just keeps these bottom teeth in line because otherwise they become crooked, all of that, right? That's the idea. And the dentist told me, hey, you should get that replaced. You should have another set of a retainer in there because otherwise they're going to get crooked again. But me being a rebel and not listening to authorities, I questioned it. And what I'd heard was that it's not natural to have crooked teeth. if you have crooked teeth, there's something else that's wrong. There's something else that's missing. Now, the reason why I believe that was because I heard a story that when you look at the teeth and the dental formation of Neanderthals and cavemen, they had perfectly straight teeth. And it just makes sense. I mean, same thing with people who need glasses. I think it must be some sort of maladaptive adjustment from modern society that makes people need glasses, because if you needed glasses back in the day, you didn't make it through evolution. Sorry, you got weeded out. And so I wondered, okay, what's behind this? Why do teeth become crooked? And the theory is, and I think it makes a ton of sense, is that we used to chew way more. We used to chew for hours a day. Raw meat, tough meat, other things that just required a lot of chomping for hours upon hours every single day. Whereas nowadays, I mean, look at what we eat. We eat very soft meat. We slurp on smoothies. We have eggs that are boiled, and we don't really use our facial muscles anymore. And so the idea is, because we chewed so much, we had much wider jaws because our muscles just developed like crazy, or they just were developed because we naturally used them. And that created a lot more space in our jaw to fit in all these teeth, right? I have all my wisdom teeth, except for on one side where it just didn't grow. I just have only 75% wisdom, apparently. But basically, I thought, if I just had a wider jaw and I chewed more, then maybe I don't need a retainer anymore. Let me try it out. And then I went without a retainer for months. And lo and behold, they're perfectly straight. I don't need a retainer. Is it because of the things that I ended up doing? I don't know. But I love chewing gum, and I use it after meals to clean my teeth and get rid of like food breath, right? And I decided to get this gum, which is called Stronger Gum. This is not sponsored. I'm not getting an affiliate, although I will check if they have affiliate links, because then I'll plug it in there. But I've been chewing this for probably a year and a half now, to the point where I just keep it in for hours and I chew it. And when my friends use it, they start complaining because it doesn't taste good. It's so tough. My jaw hurts after 5 minutes, and then they give up, right? Meanwhile, I'm chomping on this thing for like hours. And when I'm at the gym for an hour and a half and I'm working out, then I just keep chewing on that thing. And then it doesn't really taste great. I don't care. I'm not a foodie at all. I can eat unseasoned, unsalted broccoli and be happy and be like, this is great. So I'm very easy to please with food. But what I ended up doing was also just adding a normal gum that is just xylitol gum with like bubblegum taste or spearmint, whatever it is, or just mint. And yeah, just to add some taste to it. But I think this really made a big difference. Just chewing it for hours at a time. So I think my jawline got bigger. I think I got stronger facial muscles. That's one thing. So I think my face has just widened. I mean, look at this picture here. Again, I'm not sponsored. I don't know if this really works, but man, I had a big alien head, and I still have a big alien head, but at least it now gets balanced a little bit with also a wider jaw. I don't know if you can see it in this video, but anyways. Another theory I have is that just by aging, we thicken up. I've heard this from guy friends of mine who are in their 40s, and they're like, yeah, you just get thicker when you get older. Not necessarily fatter, but you just thicken up a bit. You know, it's easier to put on weight and just in general, I don't know, you just get thicker, I guess. The other thing too is that maybe I'm using a different focal length. So if you're on video, then you can see this is a 16 millimeter. It goes pretty wide, and that makes you just look very small, right? It makes your head really big. And I don't know what focal length I was using before. Maybe it's different. I don't think it is, but maybe it is. I've noticed that when people met me in real life, like for example, friends of mine who just saw me on videos and then they saw me in real life, they're like, oh, you're thicker than I thought. Like, I look bigger. I don't think I'm necessarily big, but apparently I look smaller in the videos. The second thing that I've been doing is I've been on a beard growth protocol. So I was not really happy with the amount of growth that I had on my cheeks specifically. I mean the cheeks on my face. The other cheeks I have enough. But I know that later in my 30s, it's going to thicken up. It's going to look great. But I found a secret protocol, which is not that secret. But it's basically utilizing minoxidil, which is what men use for hair loss on their head, which is, think of it as a fertilizer. I mean, I could go into the details of it. I've looked a lot into it because I really educate myself when I'm trying something new like this, and it's potentially a side effects and all that. But I've been on that minoxidil beard grind because the cool thing is that when you use it on your head, then you're going to have to keep using it, because if you stop using minoxidil, your hair is going to fall out again because it's caused by DHT, yada, yada, yada. But if you use it on your face because it doesn't have DHT that's blocking it and miniaturizing your hair, it stays. And so there's guys who, for a few months, used minoxidil, and they also used microneedling, which is like the little needle device that you do once a week to quadruple the results of your minoxidil efforts, that the beard just stayed. And so you can use it for a year or 2 years and the beard stays. And I was like, I'll do that. Sign me up for that. So that may be the second change. The third change is I just started dressing better. I mean, I used to just walk around in these black shirts and black shorts. Right now I'm wearing black shorts because they're comfortable and you don't see it on video. But I started dressing better. I started really putting an effort into, okay, what would actually look good on me? And going out and shopping, going through the painful process of going into stores and asking the person at the cash register, hey, can you help me, please? I'm just a man. I need a singular focus to attack. I need an animal to hunt. I can't just look through aisles and aisles of multiple items. Can you please help me? And then finding some items that made me look better makes a big difference. Makes a big difference in how I feel and how I show up and how I present myself and how people see me. And then lastly, maybe, I've just been doing a little bit more upper body training rather than lower body. So I have really thick legs and overdeveloped quads and a thick butt from all the squatting, because for some reason I always liked that more, and that's where a lot of my weight came from. And this year I wanted to shift that a little bit more to upper body, and maybe that is noticeable, but I don't think so. I don't think I'm in that great shape at the moment in terms of size. I'm lean, but I keep getting compliments about it, so I'm flattered. But the plan is for next year to do a 3-month period where I'm going on a crazy bulk, where I want to break through the ceiling of muscle I've developed before. And so, I'm going to document that here on the podcast as well. Maybe set a goal with you guys, another 90-day goal. Could be cool to have every quarter be like a 90-day period where we set a goal together and we basically talk about those and we have accountability groups and help each other achieve it, right? But that's pretty much it for the things that may have changed my looks. Some of it may just be aging and just thickening up in general, but not that much has changed, I would say. And hey, I have been really lucky in terms of genetics when it comes to fitness, because I don't gain fat. And I've never been anywhere near fat, like even where you can like grab it and pinch it. Like I've never had that in my life. And so a friend of mine, he recently told me that I probably have the super gene. And I'm like, what's that? That's some weird thing that he's heard somewhere again, or something he read up. And he was like, apparently 10% of African Americans have it and 1% of Caucasians in the US. And it's basically a gene that allows you to build muscle without gaining fat. And those are also people who tend to have more of the types of muscle fibers that are really good for quick reflexive movement. I don't know what they're called. Like the fast kind of muscle. When I think about that, I'm like, I was very good at sprinting. I was the number 1 sprinter in my school, or in my year, I should say. I'm very good at jumping high. I'm very good at explosive stuff. And as much as I like to take credit for the shape that I'm in and that I'm lean and stuff, I think it's genetic. This is what I used to look like as a kid. For those of you who are just listening, you see a little Schneasel running around here in red Speedos. And you can see my abs, you can see the shoulders, the biceps are developed, and the chest. Like you don't see that with other kids where you can actually see pecs. And I think it's just I'm a bit lucky when it comes to genetics. And right now I train twice a week just to maintain. It's pretty lazy workouts, I would say. It's just like I do 3 or 4 exercises just to maintain, and I look like I go way more often. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Join the Driven community if you want to meet like-minded people, have fun, and be in a group of people that just supports the goals that you have. So join right now, click the link below, apply, and I'm excited to see you in the next episode. Stay driven. I'm going to go pluck my chicken now and throw it in the oven.